Howdy my totally, as always, Tubular Gamers. We're back with, you guessed it, another video. Thanks for coming back to the channel. If you're new here, maybe stick around for a while. I got a fun video for you. Now, a few weeks ago, I ranked the hardest games I've ever played, and a lot of people really liked that video. I think a lot of people really resonated with that video, and so I'm back with another hardest games list, and today we're going to be talking about the 15 hardest modern games. Now, there are plenty of old games that are stupidly difficult. Hard NES games, challenging Super Nintendo games, stupidly difficult PS1, PS2, even PS3 games. We're not talking about those today. Today we're going to be talking about PS4 and on, really 2013, 2014 and on. The last 10, maybe 11 years. When I was originally making this list, it was going to be the 10 most difficult modern games, and then, as I'm making the list, I add more and more, and yeah, we're at top 15 hardest modern games that I've ever played. I want to throw it out there, I have not played every single game ever made. I have played over 2,000 games at this point, but that's not every game. Not even close. A game that I'm sure a bunch of people would expect to see on here that's not is Sifu. Why is it not on here? I've never played it. I just haven't sat down and played it. And so where am I going with this? I'm trying to tell you I haven't played every single game, and this is just my opinion. Difficulty really is subjective. What I find super hard, you might not find incredibly difficult. And so with all of this, let me know what you think are the most difficult games. What are some of the most difficult games you've ever played? What are some really hard games I'm missing from this list? Let me know down below. I'm always looking for new games. I love easy, hard, middle of the road games. I just love all games in general. And last time I had a bunch of great games recommended to me in the comments, so I'm always looking. And like that last list, I'm not including games where, like, yeah, if you set it to the hardest difficulty, it's super hard. So something like Last of Us 2 on Grounded, yes, it is incredibly difficult, but a majority of players aren't going to play through Last of Us 2 that way. I'm looking at games where it's hard no matter which difficulty you're playing on or however you're playing. It's also worth mentioning I'm only looking at new releases, not re-releases or remasters. There's plenty of hard-ass games that have gotten remastered for modern consoles. I'm not including those. I want games that are new. They came out during the PS4 or PS5 era. And so with all that in mind, please like, share, comment, subscribe. We got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you so much. You rule. Let's get into it. What's number 15? Number 15 is Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Now, the Crash Bandicoot series has always been pretty difficult. Those original 3 games, yeah, they're challenging, especially the original Crash. It's a hard game. And even the Insane trilogy is pretty difficult, but like I mentioned, I'm not including remasters, remakes, none of that. I'm talking about Crash Bandicoot 4. Crash Bandicoot 4 really looked at the old games and said, yeah, we're going to make a pretty challenging platformer, and that's exactly what they did. Even if you do as minimal side content or collecting as possible, this is still a relatively challenging 3D platformer. There are tons of tricky levels here where you need incredibly precise platforming, good reflexes, and you need to really understand Crash's moveset. And now it's not just Crash's moveset you really got to understand, as there's several other characters you get to play as in this game, and the difficulty does not get any easier because you're someone else. This game really has some of the most challenging levels that the series has ever seen, and like I said, it's difficult to just play through all these levels once. And I'm sure that's how most people will play through this game. They'll play through all the levels once, maybe try a few of the optional levels, and be done with it. And yeah, it's a pretty tough 3D platformer, and that's why I've got it in the number 15 spot. But if I included games where, yeah, it is super hard on a certain difficulty mode, or maybe if you play through the game a certain way or you try to 100% it's really difficult, this game would be way, way higher on the list. Crash Bandicoot 4, yeah, tough game, but if you try to 100% it, this is one of the hardest games to 100% period. Not just Crash Bandicoot, not just modern games, period. These challenging levels become absurdly difficult where you have to have absolute perfection, getting the relics, breaking all of the crates, finding all the secrets, and it just goes on and on and on. There is so much to do in this game. It is ridiculous. You'll easily double, if not triple, your playtime with this game if you try to 100% it. It is just wildly difficult. But I'm not going to include that on the list because, like I said, I'm placing games based off of how I think a majority of people will play the game, and I don't think a majority of people are going to try to 100% this game. It is the definition of intimidating. I sure as fuck didn't try to 100% it. I did a fair amount of the side content, but then just went, this is ridiculous. And I have a good feeling a fair amount of people did the same. But Crash Bandicoot 4, regardless of everything, it is a difficult game, and it's one of the most difficult platformers of the last, I'd say, 15 years. And so here we have Hotline Miami 1 and 2. Now, Hotline Miami 1, yeah, I know it was a PS3 game originally, but man, it's close enough. I'm gonna just put it in there. Hotline Miami 2 is absolutely a PS4 game though, and both of them have one thing in common. Well, they actually have a lot of things in common, but when it comes to the difficulty, yes, they have that in common. Both games are rather difficult. They're both incredibly punishing as well. I very much remember when Hotline Miami came out and people were like, wow, this game, it's actually pretty punishing. You die in one hit from basically everything, and the sequel is pretty much the same way. You're dropped into these levels where you're told to pretty much just kill everyone as quickly as possible, and you can kill them just as fast as they can kill you. It's a really great give and take, and there's a lot of rewarding parts to this game, but it is a challenging game. Both of these will test you. You will get dropped into plenty of just straight up unfair situations where you will have to retry over and over and over again until you've memorized where the enemies are, you've perfected the controls and the movement, and you can kill incredibly efficiently. There are some parts to both games where, yeah, it gets really difficult, and I found myself restarting the area probably over 30 times, like over and over and over until I memorized everything and was able to just steamroll the level. The game wants you to get hella good, and you will get hella good at it, otherwise you ain't gonna get anywhere in this game. When I say one wrong move can really mess up your entire run, I mean one wrong move can just straight up end your entire run. Like now you've got to start the level over because you went through the door the wrong way or you didn't do something exactly as you had planned. And yeah, it is rather punishing in that sense, but I wouldn't say the game is absolutely impossible, and you can get really good. I've seen plenty of videos where people just steamroll this game. They go through the whole game without dying once. They finish every level in under like 2 minutes. You can get absolutely raw as hell at this game. And that's really awesome, but it's going to be a while before you get to that level of rawness. You're going to at least need to beat the game once, because memorizing where enemies are and what weapons they have and how they can attack you is really important to this game. Luckily, both of these games aren't that long. It's a good thing they aren't, because they'd probably start to get kind of old. I mean, it is peak top-down gameplay, but dying and retrying over and over and over and over, and that's really all you do in this game, yeah, it can get kind of old. Both games are rather difficult. I have them just both on here. I couldn't really tell you which one is harder. I'd say probably 2, but I'm not even so sure if 2 is actually all that much harder, if I was just used to how Hotline Miami works. Either way, they're both challenging, but they're both incredibly rewarding and have some of the best soundtracks of any video game ever. Seriously, the soundtrack is just fucking amazing. And here we have Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Now, this game was developed by Team Ninja, makers of Nioh and Ninja Gaiden, and this isn't the only Team Ninja game on the list, but when it comes to Wolong's difficulty, I don't think it's their most difficult game. I would say it's more difficult than Stranger of Paradise and Rise of the Ronin, but it's not stupidly difficult either. Wolong I'm a bit mixed on when it comes to the difficulty. A majority of this game, I don't actually think it's that hard. Going through these levels, fighting the enemies, I don't think it's all that tough, but this game has some really challenging boss fights. Like, a few of these boss fights I would say are some of the most difficult bosses of any Team Ninja game. That fight with Lu Bu where he starts on the horse, man, I was on that shit for like over an hour or two. That was a tough fight. The final boss is no joke either. A few of the boss fights in Wolong are rather difficult. You can summon, which does make it a little easier, but I'd say a majority of the bosses are pretty challenging here. The rest of the game, yeah, it's got some difficult moments, but if you've played any Souls-like, I think you're going to be just fine. This game is obviously still harder than the average game, but compared to some of the other games on this list, I don't think it's stupidly difficult, and it doesn't ask 100% of the player the entire time. During these boss fights though, oh, it absolutely does. That's why I don't have the game super high on the list, but it still is a hard game. The game still will test you, especially during these boss fights, and if you go in here pretty casually, eventually the game's just going to wipe the floor with you. I still enjoyed my time with Wolong. I know a lot of people don't like how counter and parry heavy it is, but I thought it was a lot of fun. You do need half decent reflexes, which I don't have, but eventually I got them. And all I will say is, if I was able to beat this game, anyone can beat this game. If you're struggling with this one, I believe in you, you got this. And here we have another indie game. We have Hades. Now, Hades is a roguelike, and at first I was a bit hesitant to include any roguelikes on this list because part of the game's difficulty is just straight up random. And so it can be a little hard to assess the difficulty of an actual game. Is the game really this difficult, or am I just getting really bad drops, really bad luck, and if I get the good shit, am I just gonna steamroll it? Despite that, I still think Hades is a pretty challenging game. I don't think it's the hardest roguelike in the modern era, but I really do think it is up there as one of the hardest games of the last 10 years. Obviously, luck and randomization still does play a little part in this game's difficulty. You can get pretty good shit and make it a bit more manageable, but no matter what you have, this is still a rather challenging game. And a lot of the time the random stuff does really not do you any favors. You pick a weapon and you are trying to get the hell out of hell. You'll fight a lot of creatures, a lot of challenging bosses, and when you beat it, they want you to beat it again. You're gonna have to beat it actually several times over. But man, the first time you beat Hades, you're never gonna forget it because you're gonna have to grind and claw your way out of this place. Some of these bosses hit incredibly hard, some of the enemies can really mess you up, and sometimes you really do just have shit luck. But most of the time, even with the worst luck, like, you could still get through this game. It's just, yeah, it's a challenging time. You're going to need really good reflexes. You're going to need to know how enemies attack. You're going to have to master your weapons. And really, you're just going to need to keep at it. It's a challenging, fast-paced hack and slash that gets pretty relentless. Some of these runs can take quite a while, like not 15-20 minutes of really fast-paced action. We're talking upwards of an hour, sometimes even a little bit more. But once you play the game a good amount, which the game expects you to, you'll find yourself getting real good real quick, especially with certain weapons. You know, find a weapon that fits your playstyle, master it, and then move on. Start finding the new areas, start wailing on the bosses, and eventually you'll have beaten this game several times over. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it incredibly rewarding though? Like Hotline Miami, it becomes incredibly satisfying, incredibly rewarding, and I think the difficulty absolutely is in this game's favor. I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't like the game's difficulty because it is a roguelike and you will have to replay areas over and over. And if you get total shit drops and you have horrible luck, then yeah, the game's going to be a bit harder. But Hades is one of those games where even if you hate roguelikes, I think you're still really going to like the game. The gameplay is pretty excellent and the challenge for the most part is relatively on point. And the game really will expect a lot from the player, and I find it incredibly fun and rewarding. Maybe that's just me, but Hades is a great game I have no problem recommending, but yeah, it's a challenging game. And so here's a game I don't talk about enough, and that is Ghost Runner. Now, there is Ghost Runner 2, and I'm sure the game is super hard as well, but I have not tried Ghost Runner 2 as I'm recording this video. Hopefully sooner or later, though, I try it because I really did enjoy that first game. But something Ghost Runner 1 was hard. This is a difficult game that actually isn't all that different from Hotline Miami in its structure, where you get dropped into these relatively short levels where you basically can't make any mistakes. One hit from legit anything will just end you and you have to restart. Only now it's in a three-dimensional space where the enemies can shoot you all around. They have melee weapons as well, and you'll be platforming a bunch, whether it's wall running or just jumping or some other slick, cool-looking moves. There's plenty of platforming here as well. There's a lot more to contend with than Hotline Miami, and the game is just as challenging, if not even more challenging. Like Hotline Miami though, if you lose, you can restart pretty much immediately. And these levels devolve into trying over and over and over again, really mastering the controls, the parkour, and the platforming, knowing where the enemies are, how to react to the enemies, being able to dodge everything they throw at you, and of course, take them all out efficiently. And sometimes, one mistake, yeah, it'll mess up your entire run. And this game, especially at the end, can get pretty relentless where it's just one hard-ass level after the next. Sure, at the beginning, there's a bunch of parts that really break things up and you're hearing about the story and you're just doing some platforming and it can even be chill at times, but man, at the end of the game, the levels really do start to throw like everything at you. Throughout the game, they introduce a bunch of new gimmicks, enemy types, and traversal options, and they really just throw all of it at you at the end and go, you've done everything pretty much individually, now do it all at once, where there's a bunch of platforming challenges, different enemy types, and you're just dodging left and right. Your ass is gonna need to be a ninja. And through good old trial and error, you'll get pretty good at this game. You'll understand how everything works, you'll know where all the enemies are, you'll know how to dodge every single attack or obstacle thrown at you, and like Hotline Miami, you can get like crazy raw, where there are people who beat the game without dying once. They beat it in just like an hour or two because, yeah, they're that good. Am I anywhere near that good? Oh, hell no. Sometimes when I get like fully into a game, like 1000% attention, full gamer mode, and it's really challenging and requires a lot of precision, I'll start chewing on my tongue. It's a really bad habit. Man, this game had me chewing like crazy. It got so numb, I thought I was gonna bite my tongue off. Like, it actually got that numb. I was that into it. I gave it so much focus, and by the time I beat the game, I just went, man, my tongue really fucking hurts. Maybe that's TMI, but You know, that's just my fun little story with this game. Ghost Runner, really hard game that requires a lot of attention and precision. I just fucked up the word precision. I don't know if that's ironic or just shows how difficult this game is. Whatever, the fuck it. I'm leaving it in there. Hard ass game, but Ghost Runner, it's a pretty good one too. And so here we have Devil May Cry 5. Now, Devil May Cry and difficulty really are no strangers. That original game was super hard. Devil May Cry 3 is really hard. Devil May Cry 4 is challenging. And Devil May Cry 5, yeah, this is a hard game. This is probably the hardest hack and slash of the last like 10 years. And when it comes to the difficulty, this game doesn't really do anything new that the other games haven't seen. They just really expect you to master this game's combat systems, and the enemies hit like total trucks. The enemies can just eviscerate your health bar in a few hits. The bosses in particular really do pack a punch. And if you're constantly getting hit by them, you're going to constantly be dying. There's 3 different playable characters here, Dante, Nero, and V, and it doesn't really matter which one you're playing as, the game is going to be tricky. Obviously, like the other Devil May Cry games, you practice, you learn the game's mechanics and systems, you're going to start whooping some ass in this game. Like, this game has a ton of depth. I don't think I've ever seen a hack and slash game with so much depth. All 3 characters have seemingly endless depth, and there's so many different things you can do with each one of them. Like, yeah, the game might be hard, but the game's combat system is crazy good. It doesn't get much better than this, and thanks to just how varied and how much depth there is to this combat system, you can do some crazy shit. You can get really good at this game. And yeah, it might be difficult, but man, you'll look so raw as you destroy everything. And then of course there's the harder difficulties and all that, but we're not talking about those today. We're just talking about the base game, and the base game is challenging. It definitely has some tough boss fights, some difficult levels. You don't have to really figure out where you have to go, unlike the older Devil May Cry games, so at least that's gone. It's a very linear game for the most part, but the combat, it's challenging. You need good reflexes. You again really need to understand the combat. If you just have no idea what you're doing and you're mashing buttons, you're not going to get that far in this game. And if you do, it's probably because you're holding back and just using the guns, and it's going to take forever to beat any of these bosses, and you're not going to enjoy yourself. Like, seriously, don't be that guy. Don't be like DSP, where you wait in the corner of the arena where the boss can't get you and you slowly shoot at it with the pistols and it takes like 5 minutes. Sure, you beat the boss. Wow, you beat it in like the worst way possible. It's not efficient, it's not fun, you barely even played the game. Can't do that for every boss. Devil May Cry 5, it is one of the hardest hack and slash games. You're going to have to get good at it if you want to get very far, let alone get good ranks in these missions. But despite the difficulty, it really is a phenomenal game that is totally worth trying. And so here's the newest game on the list, and that is Armored Core 6. Now, the older Armored Cores were pretty challenging games. Really every game From Software has been a part of has been challenging. And I think it's pretty incredible that Armored Core 6 really is as uncompromised as it gets. It's just like the older Armored Core games with limited story, a very mission-based structure, and the game is still tough as nails. This is a pretty challenging game. And like many other games on this list, it really requires everything from the player. They really want you to understand the game's systems. You can't just kind of breeze through it or wing it. You're not going to make it through this game doing that. You're really going to have to understand what it means to build your mech, and understand that every mission cannot be beaten with just one mech. You're going to have to adapt, you're going to have to change, and of course you're actually going to have to be pretty decent at the game as well. There is that infamous boss towards the beginning that people have called the Filter that is rather challenging. I'd actually say that's probably like the hardest boss in the game, but a lot of the bosses in this game are no joke. The bosses are easily the hardest part of this game. They can absolutely rip your mech apart. The ripping and the tearing is going to happen to you because they can just demolish you. But at the same time, if you build your mech correctly, if you give it some awesome weapons, if you really build that thing like a tank, you can absolutely destroy them as well. You can have some amazing weapon combinations. You can of course look up all the best weapon combinations, but part of the fun really is figuring out all of these weapons, figuring out what works best with what, and for each mission as well. And there's a really great level of freedom. Despite that level of freedom though, there is a good baseline challenge. Like, the game will constantly be challenging you. Sure, not every single mission is going to challenge you. There's plenty of somewhat easy missions in this game, but there are tons upon tons of missions that are genuinely pretty difficult. Especially if a timer or a boss fight shows up, then yeah, it can actually be pretty tricky. Some of the missions, you know, I breezed through them first try, didn't even break a sweat. And then there's plenty of missions where I feel like I was on them for like an hour. Again, that filter boss is pretty hard. The game does kind of cool its jets a little after that, but it still has a lot of challenge to it. It's not as hard as the older games in my opinion. Maybe it's because the gameplay really just is a lot more refined and it's a lot easier to come to grips with, but it's still a challenging game, and it's good to see that the difficulty for the most part really remained intact in this series. And despite it being, like 10 plus years later since the last one, it's still a tough game. And so here we have the thinking person game. We have XCOM 2. This is the only game on the list that isn't really reflex heavy. This is a turn-based tactical strategy game, and I really don't talk about strategy games very much. I don't play a lot of them, but one series I love is the XCOM series, and XCOM is a relatively difficult series. XCOM 2 is one of the harder games in the series, in my opinion. Sure, you don't need like crazy reflexes, you aren't sweating like a person in a mascot outfit, and you aren't gritting your teeth or chewing on your tongue because you're just so involved with it, but it still is a really challenging game. Despite it being turn-based where you really can think about every single move, the aliens will find ways to just absolutely eviscerate you in this game. The AI is actually pretty good. They have a bunch of really good tactics, and part of the game is really just understanding what the aliens can do, how they can get you, and really it's all about how you manage that, how you cope with that, and how you try to not have as many of your teammates die as possible. The game does have permadeath, and I've had it several times where I think I'm doing alright in a battle, and literally in like one turn the aliens will systematically destroy almost my entire squad, and I'm just like, what the hell happened? And you can quick save all you want, you can have all your saves coming, but there comes a point where the game is finally just gonna be like, no, you've done enough, it doesn't really matter what you do, you're just kind of fucked. Sure, the aliens have almost no chance to hit you, they're gonna hit you. Like, the game will find new ways to fuck with you and take your squad out, even if you're actually doing pretty good. Like, it just always keeps you on your toes in that way. There's also the DLC War of the Chosen, which really does actually make the game quite a bit harder. I know there are people that still don't think XCOM 2 is all that hard, and I know there are mods that make it even harder, but man, the base game and the DLC were hard enough for me. This game at times really was just a long, grueling experience where I watched so many of my squad members die and aliens do shit that I swear they couldn't do like 2 turns ago, but that's just the name of the game. But hey, if you like strategy games or turn-based tactical games, it's absolutely one for you. This game, it will test you. And so our next game is Returnal, the third-person shooter roguelike that was actually published by Sony. All these years later, I still can't believe they published this game. And part of me still can't believe how difficult it actually is. Despite being a roguelike, this is still a rather challenging game. It's not crazy difficult, and it being a roguelike kind of adds to that, but I still did find it one of the most challenging PS5 games around. The game sees Celine, an astronaut stuck on a planet where she basically relives the day over and over and over and is trying to get the hell out of this place. But what that means for you is roguelike gameplay. The level design, the enemy placement, the enemies, the drops, the items you'll find, it's all randomly generated. But I will say it's some of the best random generation I've ever seen in a game. It all feels really different, and it's all pretty difficult. Like, even if you get good drops, the game still is rather difficult. It's very fast paced. At times it's like a bullet hell where they just send a shit ton of projectiles. Items can be very limiting, and some of the bosses will just absolutely wipe the floor with you if you're not prepared for them. The game very much does reward you though, especially if you're playing well. If you play well and kill a bunch of enemies and don't get hit, you'll start to do a shit ton of damage yourself, but you got to get to a point where you can actually do that. Like I said, it's a very fast-paced game, and you're going to need to give this game a lot of your concentration. It's really not a game where you can just kind of sit back and relax and play it. No, you got to give it a lot of concentration because the game will test you. Something else this game does is it has really long runs. Most roguelikes at most are like an hour, maybe hour and a half. I don't know, I haven't played that many, but Returnal really asks for a lot of your time. Like, some of these runs can go on for literal hours, and I mean, that's just hours of relentless assault basically, whether it's the game's environments or the enemies just constantly barraging you. Yeah, these runs can go on a long time, and it becomes very draining. And so I guess your stamina is something you have to consider in this game. Can you do those really long runs? I mean, are you ready to sit down for an hour, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours as you're just constantly being assaulted by enemies? I mean, it's very much worth it. I love this game. I love how difficult it is and how rewarding it is, but it is a bit of a time sink, and it absolutely is not for everybody. But even if you don't like roguelikes or you don't like really difficult games like this, I still think you could enjoy Returnal. It does a lot of things right. It's really interesting. The main character is really interesting. Like, it's a really awesome game, but definitely not for everybody. Alright, you knew the Souls games were going to show up somewhere. Here's where they all are. I didn't want them to just dominate the list, otherwise From Software would have just owned like 6 or 7 entries on this list. So for this entry, I'm going with Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, and I'm throwing in the Demon Souls remake. I know I'm not supposed to include remakes on here, but you know what? I'm just throwing it in. These are all really challenging games, and they all have incredibly difficult moments and bosses to them. I wouldn't say they're all that different when it comes to the difficulty. They're all in like the same category. Dark Souls 2, while it isn't crazy hard, especially after all these patches, the DLC is not messing around, especially the Fume Knight. Dark Souls 3 just has a baseline challenge that is pretty high. Elden Ring isn't crazy hard, especially with how many different things you can summon and just how summoning works in that game, but some of the boss fights are really difficult in Elden Ring. Elden Ring's a difficult one. And then Demon Souls, man, this is a hard game. Hard is a PS3 game and hard is a PS5 game. Some things really just never change, but all of the Souls games really are difficult for a variety of reasons. The combat is rather methodical. You gotta actually take your time. The enemies hit like absolute trucks. They can destroy you very easily. They can even stun lock you. The bosses really just can annihilate you in a few hits. The environments are super dangerous. Like the environments in a lot of these games can just absolutely get you killed like immediately. And then when you start fighting enemies in them, yeah, it can be rather tricky. The fact that you have to go get your souls back after you die and you just make a mad dash to get them and then you could just die again and lose everything, yeah, it's pretty punishing in that sense. These games absolutely have some punishing mechanics. I mean, Dark Souls 2 and Demon Souls really actually lower your max health when you die. Like, what the fuck, man? I'm already getting punished by having to do this over and over. Now you're just kicking me in the balls. You have pretty limited healing, all things considered. You can't just stand there spamming potions over and over. You got your Estus Flask or whatever the game decides to call it. And then the game doesn't really tell you where to go either. I mean, sometimes it's a bit linear, you know, like Demon Souls, it does tell you go to these levels, or Dark Souls 2 sometimes feels a bit more linear, but oftentimes you really just kind of wander. And sometimes you'll wander into areas where you will just get absolutely annihilated. You're not supposed to be there yet. And so just figuring out where to go, where items go, yeah, it is actually pretty challenging in that sense. Like, clearly Souls games aren't for everybody. I know plenty of people that just don't care for them. They think it's too difficult, too grueling, too punishing, whatever it is. I love these games. I've played through all of them, sometimes more than once. I like the challenge. It's incredibly rewarding when you finally do conquer some of their challenges, and I don't think these games are as hard as the media makes them out to be, but yeah, they're pretty challenging games. You can't just chill here and take your time and have a nice, you know, relaxing Sunday stroll here. No, the game's gonna wipe the floor with you if you do that. You gotta concentrate, you gotta pay attention, you gotta understand how the combat works, you gotta actually build your character a certain way and understand what these stats mean, and you very much can fuck yourself over. But damn it, that's kind of why I love these games. I just love how punishing they are because it's so rewarding when you finally are able to overcome the challenges. You could, of course, you know, just summon for all of these fights, but where's the fun in that? Come on now. Now, in that last entry, you probably noticed a certain Soulsborne game was missing, the Born game, as in Bloodborne. Yeah, Bloodborne was not there, and that's because it's here. I think Bloodborne is harder than all of the games I just mentioned, and it's one of the most difficult games From Software has ever made. I don't think it's a lot harder than the other games, but it really did challenge me, especially the bosses. Bloodborne is a lot faster than the average Souls-like game, and it requires you to be incredibly aggressive. If you're not aggressive, I just don't think you're going to do all that well in this game. Additionally, the healing is even more limited than what it was in the other Souls games. You don't have like an Estus Flask or anything like that. You have to get the vials, and you will have to grind if you actually run out, which really does suck. There's not really any shields. There's like kind of a joke shield here, but you can't just hide behind the shield like you can in Dark Souls and Elden Ring. And then I also think that this game has some of the hardest bosses From Software has ever made. Seriously, some of the bosses are really challenging in this game where they can just absolutely destroy you. The level design is rather challenging as well. They put you in a lot of perilous environments and then go, yeah, there's some enemies here. You're going to have to fight them now. And you're like, well, shit. Bloodborne is a really challenging game. There's a reason so many people do love it though. They love the challenge. They love the gameplay style of being super aggressive. The enemies are just as aggressive too. They can just absolutely wipe the floor with you, throw you out the window with the kitchen sink. Like, they can destroy you, but you can do the same to them, and it really is just a great time. Bloodborne is a fantastic game, and the challenge is one of the reasons that it's so fantastic. It's constantly scaling up, introducing new enemies and little gimmicks, and figuring out where you're supposed to go is a challenge even in itself. It always keeps things interesting. You'll always be on your toes, and some of these boss fights really are going to challenge you, especially on a first time. Of course, there's plenty of people that master this game, they master the Souls games, and one other game that's coming up, and you know, sure, you can get crazy raw at these games, you can play through them where you don't even get hit, but there's no way you're starting like that. There's no way the average person can even do 100th as good as that. You're going to need patience, you're going to need to practice, and it's just going to take a long ass time. But Bloodborne is one of those experiences that I really think is worth having. You're not going to regret it. Even if you don't really like Souls-likes, Bloodborne's a little special. It's also a little special when it comes to the difficulty. This is a tough cookie, like one of those dried up shitty oatmeal raisin cookies, not like a nice chocolate chip cookie that we'd all enjoy. No. This is one of them tough ones that it could even hurt your teeth if you bite in the wrong way. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna just move on to the next game now. Alright, and so here we have Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. Now, the Ghosts and Goblins series is absolutely no stranger to difficulty. We're talking peanut butter and jelly levels of friendship out here. Like, Ghosts and Goblins always been super difficult, and so when Capcom brought it back, I was curious if they were going to make it as hard as the old ones, and while I don't think it's as difficult as some of the old ones, it's pretty difficult. The thing about it though is that it is just as difficult as the older games for like the exact same reasons, where you die in like 2 hits, enemies are all over the place, they want to kill you, you're really going to have to memorize these levels, memorize where all of the enemies are, and yeah, you're just going to have to replay these levels over and over and over again until you've really mastered them and you just know where everything is, you know where the good power-ups are, you know where the bullshit enemies are, and then like the other Ghosts and Goblins, they also want you to replay the game. Yeah, no thank you. I have not put an absolute ton of time into this. I really haven't put a ton of time into this series because every time I feel like I'm playing it, I'm low-key banging my head against the wall. I mean, that's kind of what it feels like, where you're just replaying the same sections over and over, but hopefully eventually I'll sit down and really sink my teeth into this series. But this game is really quite challenging. It is one of the hardest platformers of the last 15 years. It's also like the only Ghosts and Goblins game of the last 15 years, and so it's pretty obvious what they're trying to say. It doesn't matter if it came out then, it comes out now. Ghosts and Goblins is just always going to be synonymous with difficulty. And yes, it's always going to be rewarding when you finally are able to finish one of these hard-ass levels, but man, the trip to get there is never going to be fun, where you're just trying over and over and over again, and it's not like Returnal or Hades where it's different every time. No, it really is exactly the same, and you're really gonna have to memorize like everything about these levels. They will be burned into your memory, otherwise you're not going to beat them. But hey, this game is clearly targeted towards the older fans, and you know, if you like the old games, you're going to like this one too. The art style maybe not so much, but I think you're still going to like this game. And so here we have the incredibly difficult Nioh. This game was developed by Team Ninja, the people who made Wolong that I talked about earlier, but also the Ninja Gaiden games. And while I don't think it's as hard as the Ninja Gaiden games, it is a really difficult game. It is maybe the hardest of all the Souls-likes. Nioh 2 is a challenging game. It probably should have been on this list, but I think it's a lot more balanced and just not as difficult as Nioh 1. I really struggled with this game. Like, I got it back when it came out and was really excited for it, but man, I was on this game for like a month. There were plenty of missions that really just kicked my ass 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Like, they were just relentless. You know, some missions, they're not all that difficult, but there are plenty of missions in this game where it felt like I was on it for just hours. And it's not like, oh, the boss is just stupid difficult and the level's easy. No, there's difficult levels in this game too. The level design itself isn't all that difficult. It's pretty straightforward actually, but some of the enemies can just wipe the floor with you. These stupid wheel things that can just stun lock you. And some of the yokai really are just not messing around. They can just destroy you. And then the environments themselves can be pretty dangerous. And then the bosses, oh yeah, the bosses are really hard in this game. Almost all of them were challenging. Some of them aren't super challenging, but a majority of them really will test you. Some of them, like the big electric dog, I was on that shit forever. Look, I know difficulty is pretty subjective, and some people might say, oh, that boss was easy. This was the boss that was hard for me. It's like that big fucking frog thing or whatever. I thought that was like one of the easiest boss in the game, but we can all agree that at least a few of the bosses are really difficult here, and then some of the bosses become normal enemies, because of course they do. The game is also significantly faster than Dark Souls. Like, you really gotta be on it, you gotta be incredibly aggressive, and the game really wants you to be that way. Like, if you play this game like how you play Dark Souls, you know, dodging around, maybe shielding a bit, you're not gonna get anywhere, because there's no shields here. Dodging around doesn't work the whole time. You're gonna have to block, and you're really just gonna have to be on these enemies' asses. But man, It's a really rewarding game, and despite how punishing it can be, I still think it is worth playing. It's a very difficult game. I think it's harder than all of the Dark Souls. I think it's harder than Elden Ring, Bloodborne, all of those. It's a really challenging game. I know plenty of people who like Souls games and they don't even like this because it's so hard and fast, and I really like it because it's hard and fast, and you know, I could make a lot of terrible, inappropriate jokes here. I'm just going to stop and say, play Neo 1. It's a good game, but it is tough as nails. Alright, we're in the number 2 spot, and here we have Cuphead. Now, Cuphead really is one of the hardest games ever made, and it still kind of blows me away with how difficult this game is. Like, look at it. It looks pretty cute and friendly, and you think it would just be some like chill little platformer. No, absolutely not. This game is not for the faint of heart. I've seen plenty of comments of people talking about how this game was just too much for them, and yeah, it is a very difficult game. It is one of the hardest games I've ever beaten. It is a run and gun. A majority of the game is boss fights, and these are some of the hardest boss fights in any video game ever. They all have multiple stages, tons upon tons of attacks, ways to destroy you, and patterns that you'll have to understand. Just when you think you're getting really good at like the game or the bosses, they'll do something crazy you haven't seen before, and you basically almost got to start from square one. I mean, all these different phases are so different from each other. We're not talking about just like a little change here and there. No, these are like completely different bosses during some of these phases, and you got to learn everything from scratch over and over basically. And the difficulty really ramps up in this game. That first island, it's really not that difficult. There might be a fight or two that'll challenge you, but it's nothing crazy. The second island, yeah, things really start ramping up, and then by the time you get to the end of the second island, oh, it's really hard. And that third island, yeah, every single level, every single fight, it's all incredibly difficult. And then there's the DLC. The DLC might be harder than even the base game. Like, the DLC was crazy hard. The final boss of the base game with King Dai, man, fuck that final boss. That one was hella hard. But then the DLC final boss, the freaking chef, he's hella hard too. I hated the final boss of both of them. I was like, dude, this is so hard. I spent hours on both of these. I spent hours on multiple bosses of Cuphead. That fucking dragon at the end of World 2. I hate the dragon at the end of the second island. And then there's levels where you're actually not fighting a boss, where it's like a more traditional run and gun, and man, I don't really like these much either. Like, they're only 2 or 3 minutes long, but these are just an absolute gauntlet. You have to go through the whole thing in one go, and it is so hard. There is so much shit. So many different things to dodge, so many things coming after you, and you can play the entire game co-op, but I don't know if that really makes the game all that much easier. Like, yes, theoretically, you can revive each other over and over and over, but good luck doing that in these boss fights where you're just getting absolutely swarmed by projectiles to the point that sometimes it feels like a bullet hell. Also, when you play cooperatively, enemy health goes up drastically, and so that means stages take longer. That means there's more room for error, and I don't really know if it's any easier playing the game in co-op. I mean, you would think it would be, but I'm really not so sure about that. It doesn't matter if you're by yourself or if you're playing with another person. This game is just going to be a very difficult time, and people have gotten really good at it. I've seen playthroughs where they finish the game in like 2 hours, they barely get hit by anything, but I can't imagine how much practice you'd have to do and how much memorization is required for this. Like, you need so much memorization. All of these bosses do something different for multiple stages, man. My head hurts just thinking about it. It's just so ridiculous. Cuphead, very difficult game, but it really is one of my favorite indie games, one of my favorite run and gun games, period. Like, despite the difficulty, it's crazy rewarding and satisfying when you beat some of the really hard bosses. Like, the sense of accomplishment you have, it's almost unparalleled when it comes to modern games. Almost. And so here we have it, the hardest modern game of them all, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. You knew it was going to be this game. There was never a scenario where it wasn't this game. From Software made plenty of hard games I've already talked about. Armored Core, Dark Souls 2, 3, Elden Ring, Demon Souls, Bloodborne, all of them are really challenging, but none of them touch Sekiro in my opinion. This is one of the hardest video games ever made. It's the hardest game of the last 20-25 years. Like, video games in general do not get much harder than this game. I remember playing it when it came out and just went, oh my god, this game, I think it's even harder than their other games. And I came back last year and went, yeah, this is a really freaking hard game. Like, it doesn't really matter when it is or how good you might think you are at games. This is a really difficult game. Of course, you absolutely can master it. You can become so raw that you like never get hit, but it's gonna take a long time before you get that good. This is a game that will absolutely test you and challenge you. legit every step of the way. The moment you start the game, it's difficult. It doesn't ramp up, it doesn't ease you into the difficulty. No, it just starts hard and it gets even harder and harder. The enemies can absolutely wipe the floor with you, and they frequently will. They just do a shit ton of damage. You're going to need to be really precise and careful. The environments are no joke either. Healing is rather limited, and then you have the real ball kicker. What really makes this game so difficult is the bosses. It doesn't matter that you can come back because of the whole shadows die twice thing. They'll just kick your ass twice in one run. Like, the bosses are so difficult in this game. Some of the hardest bosses ever in a video game are in Sekiro. There are plenty of bosses I spent over an hour trying to beat. Don't even get me started on the final boss. I was up till like 2 in the morning. I probably tried for 2, 3, maybe 3.5 hours to beat this final boss. Like, you have to just get so raw at this game to beat the final boss. It's like the hardest final boss I've ever beaten in a game, but it was so worth it, man. Like, despite the difficulty, despite how long it took me, the sense of accomplishment I had was crazy. I was like, wow, I really feel something. I feel like a badass. I beat this game. I got the reflexes of like some old ass stoner or something, and I beat it. If I did it, you can too. This game is super punishing. It is incredibly difficult. You need crazy good reflexes. You gotta parry, parry, parry. You gotta learn this game's systems. You gotta really understand the combat, like, to the fullest. Most games, you know, if you kind of understand it, you can usually wing it, get by it. No. Not in this game, not even close. And the big thing about Sekiro is, yeah, you can actually pause it, unlike Souls games, but there's no summoning. If you aren't good at the game, you can't go ask your friend, you can't go ask somebody who's good to come help you. No, you gotta beat it. The other thing is, in Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, all of those, there's multiple different gameplay styles, you know? There's different weapons, you can use magic, you can use a shield, there's different ways to go about everything. In Sekiro, you have to play their way. You have to play exactly how the game was designed, otherwise you will not beat it. And the way they designed it is super fast, ultra punishing, where you need to be incredibly aggressive, you need to parry and block everything, and there's very little room for error. You can't like spam a certain attack, you can't cheese bosses, no, not in this game. You have to play how they want or you are going nowhere, and that alone makes it incredibly difficult. But then the bosses really are just some of the most difficult bosses ever. I know I already said that, but I just really have to reiterate it. These bosses are really tough. A lot of them have multiple phases that are very different, and it feels like each boss is harder than the last. Some of them are definitely much harder than others. The monkey, even though people say, oh, he might not be that hard and he's like a spectacle, I found that boss hella hard. And then the final boss, I already talked about that one. The bosses really are difficult. This entire game is difficult, but it really is one of the most satisfying games ever made. It is a fantastic game. I absolutely recommend everybody should try it despite the difficulty. Like, you feel so cool. You feel so awesome, and it's just incredibly rewarding when you actually do pull off the awesome parries, when you beat the super hard boss. Like, very few games have gotten this feeling out of me, this like emotion where I'm just like, yes, I finally did it. I beat it. And Sekiro is like the epitome of all of those games. Like, no game has gotten to me like how this game has, and it's just a very rewarding, fulfilling experience that is very much worth your time. All right, well, I've talked about some really hard games today. I've rambled on a good like 40-45 minutes. I hope it was what you were looking for, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you made it to this part of the video, comment bricks as in what's in houses or what the wolf blows down. And I hope to see you all on the next video. Bye-bye now. Happy holidays.